In this lesson, I'm going to go over solving and simplifying absolute value equations. Our language objective will be able to explain how many solutions does an absolute value equation have. So for the first example, for example A, for example 1, if you'd like, we have absolute value of x minus 2 equals 10. So on the left side, I'm going to work out the problem. On the right side, I'm going to go through and explain what steps I'm taking to solve the problem. So what you want to do for all absolute value equations is you're going to want to start off by making two problems. So make two problems. So my equation here, absolute value of x minus 2 equals 10. The first problem is just going to say x minus 2 equals 10. The second problem, it's still going to say x minus 2 equals, this time instead of having positive 10, I'm going to make the 10 negative. So you just change the sign of the number that's not in the absolute value. So, and then you can draw the line. So remember, drawing your line down the middle of the equal to sign just helps us keep our equation balanced. So then we're going to solve these. So to solve, we are going to add 2 to both sides of the equations. So plus 2 here and plus 2 here. So when you do this, you get x equals 12 or x equals negative 8. So x equals 12 or x equals negative 8. And then we could check these by plugging them in. If I plugged in 12 for x, I would get 12 minus 2, which is 10, and the absolute value of 10 is 10. So this checks. The next one, if I plugged in negative 8 minus 2, that's negative 10. The absolute value of negative 10 is 10. So this checks as well. So this is sort of the basic process of how you solve an absolute value equation. You make your two problems and change the sign of the number. So let's look at a couple more examples. So absolute value of x minus 3 equals 6. So in this example, a little bit different than the first one. Now I have something on the same side of the absolute value, but it's not inside the absolute value sign, it's outside. So this negative 3 is outside the absolute value, so you need to get rid of that first. So to do that, you're going to add 3 to both sides. You can draw your line. So this will be absolute value of x equals 6 plus 3 is 9. And now you create your two equations. So before you go creating your two equations, you need to first get the absolute value by itself. So now the absolute value of x is all by itself. So I can create x equals 9 or x equals negative 9. Those are my two solutions for that one. Here's another example. 2 times the absolute value of x plus 5 equals 6. So notice, in this absolute value equation, there's this 2. The 2 is not inside the absolute value, it's outside. So to solve this, I need to start by getting rid of that 2. So this 2 is being multiplied by the absolute value. So I'm going to undo multiplication, I'm going to divide. So I'm going to divide by 2. So these 2's are going to cancel. So this will get me absolute value of x plus 5. So nothing, notice, it didn't change anything inside the absolute value. The only thing that changed is now I don't have the 2 out front. It does not change anything inside the absolute value. So now I'm going to make my two equations. X plus 5 equals 3 and x plus 5 equals negative 3. So these are my two equations. You're going to draw the line. And then to solve these, we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. So subtract 5 here and subtract 5 here. So 3 minus 5 is negative 2, so x equals negative 2. And negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8, so x equals negative 8. So these are my two solutions for this absolute value equation. So if you picked up a copy of the guided notes, there are 3 more problems on the front side of that sheet. If you didn't pick it up, this is one of the 3 problems if you'd like to give it a try. We'll go over example B together during our live meet. And then for some extra practice, this is part of example B. So for some extra practice, you can do this example and this next example. These are 2 extra practice ones for you to do. Okay, so obviously we're not doing partners, but it says partner A, please tell partner B how many solutions you will have when solving an absolute value equation. Remember, you're always going to have 2 solutions because we're solving 2 equations. So the last little piece that I want to go over is solving absolute value inequalities. It's just like solving that we just did. You still need to make 2 problems, and you still need to make sure you get the absolute value all by itself first. So in this example, notice there's nothing to get rid of in front of the absolute value, so I can make my 2 problems. The difference here is this. When I make my 2 problems, so x divided by 2 minus 5 is less than 15, the other problem is going to be x divided by 2 minus 5. So there's 2 things that we need to do when we make the second problem for inequalities. The first thing is you need to flip the sign. So the sign changes from less than to greater than. And then we need to change the sign of the number. So here we're changing it from positive to negative. There's 2 things you need to do when you're solving an inequality. You need to change the sign of the inequality, and then you need to change the sign of the number. So there's 2 things you need to do when you solve an absolute value inequality. But after you change the sign, you can go ahead and draw the line down the absolute value. And then we can solve this. So we're going to, remember, we're going to undo addition for the subtraction first by adding 5. So we'll add 5 to both sides. So plus 5 here, and plus 5 here, and plus 5 here, and plus 5 here. So add 5. So this gets us, these 5s cancel, these 5s cancel. This is x divided by 2 is less than 20, and x divided by 2 is bigger than negative 10. So this was the first step. The second step is I have x divided by 2, so I need to undo the division by 2 by multiplying. I want to multiply both sides of the equation by 2. So multiplying undoes the division. So multiply everything by 2. So that these 2's cancel, and I get x is less than 40. And then these 2 cancel, and I get x is bigger than negative 20. So x is less than 40, or x is greater than negative 20. And then we can graph our solution on the number line. So I'm going to plot negative 40. Sorry, I'm going to plot 40. So I'll plot 40, I'll have an open circle at 40. Then x is less than negative 20. So here's negative 10, negative 20. So open circle at negative 20. So I'm going to shade x is bigger than x is bigger than negative 20, and x is less than negative 40. So I'm shading everything in between the two circles. So everything that's in between the two circles is what you're going to shade. So to check this, we can pick any two values between negative 20 and 40, but we can't include negative 20 or 40 because those were strictly less than sign and a bigger than sign. So let's say we chose negative 10. Well, negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5, and negative 5 minus 5 is negative 10. So this is negative 10 is less than 15. Well, that's true because the absolute value of negative 10 is 10, and 10 is less than 15. So let's pick another one. Let's say we did 20. Let's say we chose 20. Well, 20 divided by 2 is 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. So this will be absolute value of 5 is less than 15. Well, the absolute value of 5 is 5. So this is also true. So we checked this one by plugging in two values that were in between negative 20 and 40, but we couldn't include negative 20 or 40. Well, here's another example. Absolute value of negative 3x minus 1 divided by 2 is less than or equal to 3. So remember, your goal is first you want to get the absolute value by itself. Notice I have division by 2 that doesn't take place inside the absolute value. It takes place outside. So first, multiply everything by 2. So these 2's cancel. So I get absolute value of negative 3x minus 1 is less than or equal to 6. So now create your two problems. So this would be negative 3x minus 1 is less than or equal to 6, or negative 3x minus 1 is bigger than or equal to negative 6. So I'm going to let you finish solving that one. So hopefully you took a minute to try this one. This one was an inequality, so remember we add 1 to both sides first. But since this is an inequality, when we divide both sides by negative 3, remember we need to switch the sign. So the signs switch. So this will be x is greater than negative 2.3, and then the other one will be x is less than 1.7. Example 2, or another example, absolute value, 4 times the absolute value of x plus 2 is bigger than 12. Again, notice that there's a 4 outside of the absolute value, so you need to remove that first. If you draw your line, divide both sides by 4. These 4's cancel, so I get absolute value of x plus 2 is bigger than 3. And now you can create your two problems. So x plus 2 is bigger than 3, or x plus 2, remember you're switching the sign and you're changing the sign of the number. So and then draw your line, and then you can solve this one. So and then just finishing this one up, you would subtract 2, so x is bigger than 1. Subtract 2, so x is less than negative 5. So you're going to shade everything in between 1 and negative 5. So negative 5, negative 4, 0. Okay. So for your shading for this, open circle at 1. It says x is bigger than 1, so you're going to shade to the right. And then open circle at negative 5. It says x is less than negative 5, so shade to the left. So this is what your solution region looks like for this example. So this does it for solving absolute value equations. I will go over the special cases that if you have the guided note sheet, you should see it. I will go over those during our live meet.